Okay, so now let's get to know that template, and we'll, like I said last time, we'll do two parts. Part one this time, part two on Thursday. So here's what you want to approach, and I'll show you where and how to create the file in a minute. But you'll do all the head section and half of the body section, okay, for this analysis, and you'll do it in a markdown file. And what I'll look for in your analysis is that you've taken the time to understand the code in your index file, because the better you understand it, trust me, it'll pay off when you go to do the project 0, okay? And that's how I will grade it, is how well you documented the code. Because up in the head section, of course, it's the standard HTML that we've seen some of. I'll just kind of give you an overview of mine. And then on the body section, this is when we come into the bootstrap part, and you're going to want to look at the HTML and the classes to understand how Bootstrap is used to create your particular design. Now, you may not have all of it down, but the more of it you spend time understanding, the better the next, again, we're going to work on project zeros for several items till the end. Okay, so I'm going to move over to VS Code. This is where I left it when we were copying that. So what I would do here is I'd go back and open up the base 82 Spring 24, okay? And that way I would have both my private and my public. And then under lectures, you're going to create a new folder called template. And then under template, you're going to create a new file. You'll call it readme.md, okay? And now under here, and this is where, right, we've learned some, we're just going to do head section of my template, right? And then we'll do, in this case, you'll end up doing also, and I want you to do more outlining inside. I'm just giving you the body section half, first half of body section. And actually, I think we'll just put body section here because we'll end up finishing this one next time. Okay? Okay, so that's just the structure. You'll end up, and I'm not going to give commit messages on this one. You just have one commit. You'll end up giving me that subdirectory for your commits. You can do multiples totally if you want to, but I'm not going to require them, because more than anything, I want to look at the output that you've done here. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my project 0, right, my P0. I'm going to look at my index file. And now I'm going to analyze what's in the head section. Now, some of this we've already covered, right? So if you see meta data, we've talked about a little bit. We've talked about UTF some. I think we had that as an item. We've talked a little about the content, but this is where you're going to end up, you'll modify the name and the description for later, so you don't have to do that here, right? So you have a title, you'll update that later. But this is now where you get in and start looking at, oh, okay, here's the favicon. Now, the thing I would do is I would look at it both in the code and also in live server. Now, if I run live server here, because I'm in that file, it's going to fire up that file, okay? And so now what I would do is also, spend a little time. Now this part of the head section probably is not going to help me in live server, but definitely it will start helping me when I'm starting to look at things inside of Bootstrap. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do here is like, okay, right, so find out this font. It's Open Sans, so this is the Google font for me that's used in here, right? And then I would want to, and this is probably where you'll end up spending a bit of time, is looking, and again, all of ours are different. So I have 1, 2, now this Bootstrap CSS I don't have to analyze, but I would want to know what this Bootstrap icon is, so go out and find that. So then in your, right, in here, right, you're going to list things. Now you can do it, we've seen different ways you can do it, right? Come in here to list the things in your head section that show me you took the time to analyze what these were, right? So I would say, okay, I would need to understand, here's the font, the Google font. It's actually using 2 Google fonts in this case that I can see. So I'd want to go over and make sure, was there another one? So I know that my template actually uses 3 Google fonts. That's quite a few, which makes it load a little slower, and look at all the different, and then I'd want to maybe go look at Google fonts to understand maybe what some of this other stuff means. And again, this is where you could shout out on Discord to ask questions about stuff. If you didn't understand it, you could also ask ChatGPT about this stuff. So then I would dig into the vendor CSS files to understand what these files are. Now this is where I could and should also come down to my folder, my vendor, and this, and then I would start looking at this and I'd be like, okay, the JS files you don't have to worry about. Oh, and look at this. This file is just so much stuff. How would I understand what that is? I wouldn't, right? So I'd be like, okay, how could I understand? In this case, let me go. I know I'm popping around a little bit here, right? So if I couldn't understand by just looking at here, I would go look at I would search for just this name, the AOS, right? Sorry, I'm just looking real quickly if there's anything in this that's showing me what that is. And actually, probably, if I go look, sometimes the documentation file will tell you what that's So what I would probably do is pull up another browser window, right? And I would search for, see if it's a Bootstrap specific, right? AOS. Oh, there we go. It's animated. Oh, there we go. Okay. So this is like on top of Bootstrap, which is a CSS framework. There's also an animated scroll, right? So this is what this does for me. So I could spend a little time understanding what that AOS does, even if by looking at the output I didn't. I'd go do some research. I would understand what that is. Sorry, I'm going to open up the index file again, right? So I'd do the same thing for the Bootstrap icon, the box icons, the G-Light box, the Swiffer. So I would do that for each of these in order to, sorry, I'm going to have to get rid of this in a second, to understand what each of these are, what are they adding to the functionality of what functionality are they adding to my template? Sorry, let me be more clear. And then after I got through that, I would go look at the CSS file and see if there was anything, I'd just kind of look at it and see if there was anything specific I'd want to know about. Right? There's a lot, there could be, and in this case, look how much custom. So in this case, on top of the CSS for Bootstrap, how Bootstrap is implementing the design, this designer also created a lot of their own custom stuff. Now, obviously, you can't go through here and analyze all of it, right? But you could get a general sense about, and maybe analyze at least a couple of classes to start understanding this. And it's not a bad idea to start at the top. So I'd want to see a little bit of analysis because I suspect all of them will have their own CSS file as well. Okay, so that's what it would mean to look at the head section. Now yours again could have other things in there, so you'll just want to have those. And so now you're going to do for the first of this, now the body section. So now if I came down into the body, I'd be like, okay, I class, what does that mean, right? So I'd want to, that's an icon class, okay? If I didn't understand I class, I'd go search. And this is a mobile nav toggle button. I would search for what is I class, okay? Well, actually, class is the name, so it's an I, which means an icon. And if you didn't know that, right, you'd search for HTML I element, right? And you would see it represents an I text, right? So that's the way you could look at that. And then you could look at, oh, it's using, what are these? And this is where you start digging into the styles for the bootstrap to understand, because each of these is a different style that does something on here. And again, the more time you spend here, the more time you're going to understand. Because really in this part here, you're looking at both, what does this do? Right? We know what the head does. Okay, so now this first div, and this is a D-flex, which tells me it's using Flexbox. And if you don't know, go searching for it. So in this case, I would search for Bootstrap D-flex to understand what that one is, right? Bootstrap, yep, right? Cool. So then I would look through here, okay, Flexbox container, know a little about it. You don't have to know everything, but at least get as familiar as you can with what this means, okay? Again, you're not going to know all of it, right? So now we'd come into here, we say here we have another div. They're using a lot of divs. That doesn't totally make me happy, but look, we have a nav, they have an ID here, but look, we have two classes here. And then we have I just jumped over the profile section. So this is my point. You do half. Look at half of the files. So if I looked at this, I'd like look at all this, because some of this will be repeated. And you can just say it repeats, right? Some of the divs, there's nothing new. I have a row, and then we know what these columns large are. We've seen some of this, and oh look, data AOS. So this is that animation that I had before. And this is also where you can come over here, right, and start playing with some of the CSS. Like if I was to look into here, oh yeah, okay, so there's the hero section. There's the hero file, right there. So that's that image file. I kind of gave you a little overview of that before, but this is really where you spend your time getting to know that template. Okay, so again, how I'll grade it is how well did you document it and analyze what's in there. And then for Thursday night, we'll finish up and do part 2 and do the rest of the HTML in the body section. Okay, so in this case, you're going to submit a URL, not a text box, a URL, and that will be for however many commits. If you only do one, that's fine. For this one, you could do commit might be first half, whatever you want to give it. I'm not going to be specific this time. Just give me your commits for that folder. All right, hope this helps.